You are not tired. You are not unlucky. You are undisciplined with your emotions. Every reaction you don't control controls you. Every outburst, every explanation, every emotional decision is proof that something outside of you is in charge. This audiobook is not about feeling less. It's about commanding yourself. Emotionally strong people are not calmer by accident. They are trained. If you don't master your emotions, someone else will use them against you. Chapter 1. Your emotions are not you. You feel angry. You feel afraid. You feel frustrated. And instantly you believe that is who you are. That belief is the first mistake. Your emotions are not your identity. They are signals. Nothing more. A signal is information. Command is authority. Most people confuse the two. They feel something and they obey it. That's weakness. You have a choice. That's the key. You feel it, but you don't obey it. Right now, most of your decisions are emotional reactions pretending to be logic. You call it gut feeling. You call it being honest. You call it expressing yourself. But let's be clear. It's not about honesty. It's about lack of discipline. Emotionally weak people live inside their emotions. Emotionally strong people stand above them. They observe. They pause. They decide. That's the difference. You don't need their permission to stop reacting. You don't need anyone's approval to take control of yourself. Let's break this illusion completely. Emotions are messages, not orders. Anger says, something feels unfair. Fear says, something feels uncertain. Frustration says, something is blocked. Notice the word, feels. Feelings are interpretations, not facts. But when you identify with them, you turn feelings into commands. You say, I am angry, so I must respond. I am hurt, so I must explain. I am afraid, so I must retreat. No, wrong. You feel angry, but you don't obey it. You feel afraid, but you don't surrender to it. You feel frustrated, but you don't let it drive. That's the key. Emotion is a notification. Discipline is the response. Strong people don't eliminate emotions. They govern them. You have a choice. Every single time. Why identifying with emotion destroys you. When you say, I am angry, you fuse identity with state. Now anger controls behavior. When you say, I feel anger, you create distance. Now you control behavior. That distance is power. Weak people collapse into emotion. Strong people create separation. It's not about being cold. It's about being clear. If you are your emotions, then anyone who can trigger them controls you. Think about that. Anyone can manipulate you. Anyone can push your buttons. Anyone can derail your focus. That's not strength. That's exposure. You don't need their permission to step back emotionally. You don't owe reactions to anyone. You owe discipline to yourself. Observation is dominance. The moment you observe an emotion, you are no longer owned by it. You notice tension in the chest, heat in the face, fast breathing. You don't judge it. You don't suppress it. You watch it. That pause right there is dominance. Most people never pause. They explode. They justify. They spiral. That's why they stay stuck. You feel it, but you don't obey it. Say that again internally. Repeat it until it becomes instinct. You have a choice. That's the key. Emotional strength is not expression. Modern culture lies to you. tells you, let it out. Be authentic. Say how you feel. That advice creates fragile people. Real strength is containment, not expression. Real power is control, not release. It's not about repression. It's about timing. Emotion expressed without discipline becomes regret. Emotion processed after control becomes wisdom. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. The practical shift. Do this daily. From today forward, you apply this rule. Name the emotion. Then pause. Then decide. Not later. Not sometimes. Every time. Step 1. Label it. I feel anger. I feel fear. I feel pressure. Step 2. Pause for 5 seconds. No talking. No texting. No reacting. Step 3. Ask one question. What response serves my long-term control? That's it. This is how you retrain your nervous system. This is how you become unshakable. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need approval to be disciplined. Why most people never master this? Because reaction feels good in the moment. It releases pressure. But relief is expensive. Costs respect. Costs leverage. Costs self-trust. Discipline feels uncomfortable at first, but it compounds. Every time you don't react, you build authority internally. And internal authority is everything. You feel it, but you don't obey it. The identity shift. Stop saying, I am emotional. I'm just like this. That's my personality. Those are excuses. It's not about personality. It's about discipline. Strong people aren't born controlled. They are trained. You are training now. Every pause rewires you. Every calm response upgrades you. You have a choice. That's the key. Closing the chapter. Understand this clearly before moving forward. The moment you stop identifying with emotion, you reclaim control. The moment you observe instead of react, you gain power. This entire audiobook is built on this foundation. You are not your emotions. You are the one who decides what to do with them. You've separated identity from feeling. Now it's time to learn what destroys control faster than anything else. You've learned to observe. Now let's talk about the most dangerous habit of all. Chapter 2. Reaction is the fastest way to lose power. The moment you react, you lose control. Not sometimes. Not eventually. Immediately. Reaction is surrender disguised as speed. Most people think reacting fast is strength. They think quick answers show confidence. They think emotional responses prove authenticity. That's a lie. The first reaction is always the wrong one. You have a choice. That's the key. Every immediate reaction hands power to the outside world, to people, to situations, to pressure. And once you give power away, you don't get to decide the outcome. Reaction makes you predictable. Predictable people are easy to control. If someone knows how to trigger you, they own you. If someone knows what makes you angry, insecure, defensive, you are exposed. Think about it. Comment, a look, a message, and suddenly your mood changes. Your tone shifts. Your behavior follows. That is not control. That is conditioning. You don't need their permission to stop reacting. You don't owe anyone instant access to your emotions. You have a choice. The first reaction is always the wrong one. Why reaction feels so urgent? Reaction feels urgent because emotion demands release. Emotion says, do something now. Say something now. Defend yourself now. But urgency is not importance. Urgency is pressure. And pressure is designed to rush you into mistakes. That's how people manipulate you. That's how situations trap you. Strong people don't eliminate urgency. They outweigh it. Calm delay creates dominance. That's the key. Delay is not weakness. Silence feels uncomfortable to reactive people. Pause feels like loss. But in reality, delay is control. When you pause, you regain leverage. When you pause, you see options. When you pause, you decide instead of react. The person who reacts first loses. Always. The first reaction is always the wrong one. Say it again. Let it settle. Reaction costs you respect. Every emotional reaction leaks authority. Explaining too fast. Defending too hard. Justifying too much. It signals insecurity. It's not about communication. It's about discipline. People respect those who don't rush. Those who don't flinch. Those who don't explain themselves under pressure. You don't need their permission to slow down. You don't need approval to stay silent. Calm delay creates dominance. Real-world examples you already know. Think about arguments you lost. Not because you were wrong, but because you reacted. You raised your voice. You sent the message too quickly. You said what you felt, not what served you. Later, clarity arrived. Too late. That's the cost of reaction. You have a choice. Reaction versus response. Reaction is automatic. Response is intentional. Reaction is emotional reflex. Response is disciplined action. Weak people react. Strong people respond. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. The gap between stimulus and response is where power lives. Your job is to widen that gap. The rule of delay, non-negotiable. From now on, you follow this rule. Never react in the first moment. Not in conversation. Not in conflict. Not in decision-making. Pause. Count silently if you need to. Breathe once. Say nothing. That pause is power. The first reaction is always the wrong one. Why calm unsettles people? When you don't react, people feel exposed. They expect resistance. They expect defense. They expect emotion. When they don't get it, they lose balance. Calm is intimidating. Silence is pressure. That's why emotionally strong people appear dominant without raising their voice. They don't rush. They don't explain. They don't flinch. You don't need their permission to stay calm. Stop confusing speed with strength. Fast reactions are for survival. Slow decisions are for leadership. If you want control over your life, you must slow down your responses. That doesn't mean hesitation. It means intentional timing. It's not about fear. It's about discipline. You have a choice. What to do in the moment. When pressure hits, do this. Step 1. Say nothing. Step 2. Notice the urge to react. Step 3. Let it pass. Urges peak, then fade. If you wait, clarity arrives. Always. That's the key. The identity shift. Stop seeing yourself as quick to respond. Stop calling it personality. It's not about personality. It's about discipline. You are becoming someone who does not react on impulse. Someone who chooses timing over emotion. Someone who controls the pace. That identity changes everything. Reaction makes you small. Reaction shrinks perspective. Traps you in the moment. Response expands perspective. It aligns you with long-term power. Ask yourself before reacting, will this matter tomorrow? Will this strengthen my position? Will this cost me control? If the answer is no, pause. You have a choice. Closing the chapter. Understand this deeply. The fastest way to lose power is to react. The fastest way to gain it is to pause. Every calm delay builds authority. Every withheld reaction strengthens control. You have learned to observe emotion. Now you have learned to resist reaction. But discipline doesn't end here, because reaction is only one leak. There is another habit that drains your power even faster. You've learned to pause. Now let's remove the need to explain. Chapter 3. Emotional discipline is a daily skill. You don't become emotionally strong by wanting it. You don't wake up one day calm, steady, unshakable. That's a fantasy. Emotional strength is trained, daily, deliberately, like a muscle. Motivation is unreliable. Intensity fades. Discipline remains. Discipline beats intensity. Every time. You have a choice. That's the key. Why motivation fails you. Motivation shows up when life is easy. It disappears under pressure. That's why emotionally reactive people collapse when things get hard. They relied on feeling ready. They relied on inspiration. Discipline does not ask how you feel. It tells you what to do. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Strong people don't wait to feel calm. They act calm until calm becomes default. That's training. Emotional control is built in small moments. You don't train emotional discipline during major crises. You train it in minor discomforts. The urge to reply immediately. The impulse to explain. The need to correct someone. These are the reps. Small moments of restraint compound into unshakable control. Every time you pause instead of react, you get stronger. Every time you hold silence instead of speaking, you gain leverage. Discipline beats intensity. Every time. Most people train the wrong muscle. They train expression. They train reaction. They train release. They say, I need to get this out. I can't hold this in. That's just how I am. That's weakness disguised as honesty. You don't need their permission to stop expressing everything. You don't owe the world access to your inner state. Control is not suppression. Control is command. The daily discipline protocol. Here is the standard. Non-negotiable. Every day you practice restraint. One conversation where you speak less than you want. One moment where you delay a response. One situation where you don't explain yourself. That's it. You don't need extreme challenges. You need consistency. Discipline beats intensity. Every time. Why small wins matter. Emotional discipline compounds quietly. No applause. No recognition. But over time, something shifts. You feel less urgency. Less pressure. Less need to prove. That's power. Weak people chase emotional release. Strong people build emotional control. You have a choice. Train under low stakes. If you only try to control yourself during major conflict, you will fail. You train under low stakes so you can perform under pressure. Practice calm in traffic. Practice silence in meetings. Practice restraint in messages. These moments don't feel important. They are everything. That's the key. Discipline is boring, and that's why it works. Discipline is repetitive, unemotional, unexciting. That's why most people avoid it. They want transformation to feel dramatic. They want breakthroughs. Real control feels quiet. It's not about intensity. It's about discipline. Discipline beats intensity. Every time. The urge will always come. Let's be clear. The urge to react will not disappear. The impulse to explain will not vanish. You don't eliminate urges. You outgrow obedience to them. You feel it, but you don't obey it. Say it again. You have a choice. The inner conversation. When the urge hits, say this internally. I don't need to act on this. I can wait. I decide. Short, firm, non-negotiable. Talk to yourself like a leader. That's training. Why people around you will notice. As you practice discipline, others feel it. You become harder to read, harder to provoke, harder to manipulate. Not because you changed them, because you changed your responses. Calm attracts respect. Consistency builds authority. You don't need their permission to change how you operate. Stop measuring progress by feeling. Some days discipline feels easy. Some days it feels impossible. Ignore both. Measure progress by behavior. Did you pause? Did you restrain? Did you choose discipline? That's the scorecard. Discipline beats intensity. Every time. The identity you are building. You are becoming someone who does not rush, does not leak emotion, does not need release. Someone who operates on principle, not impulse. That identity is built one decision at a time. You have a choice. That's the key. The cost of skipping days. Miss one day, nothing happens. Miss many, everything slips. Emotional discipline decays without practice. That's why it must be daily. Not when convenient. Not when motivated. Daily. Closing the chapter. Understand this before moving forward. Emotional strength is not discovered. It is earned. Every small restraint compounds. Every disciplined response builds control. You are training something most people never will. That gives you an edge they will never understand. You've learned to observe emotion. You've learned to delay reaction. Now you've learned to train discipline daily. But there is one habit that destroys discipline faster than anything else. You've built control. Now stop leaking it. Chapter 4. Stop explaining yourself. Most people don't talk to communicate. They talk to defend. They explain. They justify. They overclarify. And every extra word leaks power. Over-explaining is emotional leakage disguised as logic. Silence is proof of self-trust. You have a choice. That's the key. Why you explain too much? You explain because you want to be understood. You explain because you want to be seen as reasonable. You explain because you want approval. That's not communication. That's validation seeking. The need to justify is the need for validation. Strong people don't need to be understood immediately. They trust their position. Weak people rush to explain because silence feels dangerous. It's not about clarity. It's about insecurity. Every explanation is a negotiation. When you explain yourself, you invite judgment. You open the door to, why not? That doesn't make sense. You should have. Now you are defending instead of deciding. That's the trap. You don't need their permission to decide how you act. You don't owe explanations for every boundary. Silence is proof of self-trust. Why over-explaining kills respect. Respect is built on certainty. When you over-explain, you signal doubt. When you justify, you signal weakness. When you rush to clarify, you signal fear of rejection. People don't respect those who plead their case. They respect those who stand firm. It's not about arrogance. It's about discipline. You have a choice. Explanation versus statement. There is a difference. Explanation seeks agreement. Statement asserts position. I can't because versus I won't. One invites debate. The other ends it. Silence is proof of self-trust. That's the key. Real-world leaks you don't notice. You explain why you're busy. You explain why you said no. You explain why you feel the way you feel. Notice the pattern. Every explanation is an attempt to control perception. But you can't control perception. You can only control behavior. Stop leaking energy into narratives. When silence is stronger, silence creates pressure. When you don't explain, others fill the gap. They reveal themselves. They expose intentions. Explanations protect others from discomfort. Silence forces accountability. You don't need their permission to stay quiet. The discipline of short answers. From now on, practice this. Short, clean, final. Yes. No. I'll handle it. That's my decision. No stories. No justification. Silence is proof of self-trust. Why this feels uncomfortable? Because you were trained to earn acceptance. Because you were rewarded for being agreeable. Because silence once cost you connection. But strength costs comfort. You have a choice. Discomfort now or disrespect later. Stop defending your boundaries. Boundaries don't need defense. They need enforcement. If you explain your boundary, you weaken it. If you repeat it, you strengthen it. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. The moment of practice. Next time someone questions you, do this. Pause. Answer once. Stop talking. Feel the urge to explain. Ignore it. You feel it, but you don't obey it. That's training. Who this changes you into. Someone who doesn't chase understanding. Someone who doesn't fear silence. Someone who trusts their own decisions. That presence changes how people treat you. Calm, firm, unmoved. Silence is proof of self-trust. When to explain, rarely. Explanation is a tool, not a reflex. Use it strategically, not emotionally. If explanation strengthens your position, use it. If it weakens you, stay silent. You decide. You have a choice. The identity shift. Stop seeing explanation as politeness. Start seeing it as leverage. You are not rude for being brief. You are disciplined. It's not about kindness. It's about control. Closing the chapter. Understand this clearly. Every unnecessary explanation hands power away. Every moment of silence builds authority. You don't need to justify yourself to be strong. You need to trust yourself. You've learned to control emotion. You've learned to delay reaction. You've learned to practice discipline. Now you must protect that discipline from manipulation. Because attachment is the next weakness. You've stopped explaining. Now stop attaching. Chapter 5. Detach or be manipulated. If someone can control how you feel, they can control what you do. That is the rule. People can only control what you are emotionally attached to. Nothing else. No attachment. No leverage. You have a choice. That's the key. Attachment is invisible leashes. Most people think manipulation looks aggressive. It doesn't. Manipulation is subtle, quiet, emotional. A look, a tone, silence. If your mood depends on it, you're attached. If your confidence drops because of it, you're attached. If your peace disappears when it's threatened, you're attached. And attachment is leverage. No attachment. No leverage. Why you resist detachment? Because you confuse detachment with coldness. You think it means you don't care. Wrong. Detachment is not lack of care. It's lack of dependence. You can care deeply and still remain unmovable. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. That's the key. The truth about control. Control doesn't come from force. It comes from pressure. Pressure only works when something matters too much. Approval, tension, outcomes, opinions. If those things control your inner state, you are exposed. You don't need their permission to detach. You don't owe anyone emotional access. Common attachments that ruin you. Approval attachment, outcome attachment, image attachment, relationship attachment. You want to be liked. You want things to go your way. You want to be seen a certain way. That wanting creates tension. That tension creates reaction. No attachment. No leverage. Detachment creates clarity. When you detach, the noise fades. You see behavior clearly. You hear intentions clearly. You decide without distortion. Emotionally attached people guess. Detached people observe. That's power. You have a choice. Why people try to reattach you. When you detach, people feel it. They lose influence. They lose control. So they provoke. They guilt. They test. Not consciously. Instinctively. Your job is simple. Do not reattach. No attachment. No leverage. The practice of detachment. Start small. Detach from needing a response. Detach from needing agreement. Detach from needing closure. If someone goes silent, stay steady. If someone disapproves, stay calm. If someone withdraws, stay grounded. You feel it, but you don't obey it. That's discipline. Detachment in conflict. In conflict, attachment makes you fight to win. Detachment makes you fight to decide. Attached people escalate. Detached people control the pace. Calm is impossible without detachment. That's the key. This is not indifference. Indifference is careless. Detachment is intentional. You still show up. You still act. You just don't cling. You don't need their permission to keep your emotional balance. The moment of test. You will feel the pull, the urge to fix, the urge to chase, the urge to explain. That urge is attachment begging for relief. Pause. No attachment. No leverage. The inner shift. Stop asking, how do they feel about this? Start asking, how do I want to respond? That question changes everything. You have a choice. Why detachment makes you unstoppable? When nothing external controls your state, you move freely. You speak clearly. You decide calmly. You walk away easily. That freedom is threatening to manipulative people. Good. The discipline statement. Repeat this internally when pressure rises. I don't need this to go my way. I'm steady either way. I decide. Short, firm, final. No attachment. No leverage. The identity you are building. You are becoming someone who does not cling, does not chase, does not beg. Someone who can care without collapsing. That's emotional maturity. It's not about coldness. It's about discipline, Closing the chapter. Understand this. The more attached you are, the easier you are to control. The more detached you become, the freer you move. You don't detach to escape life. You detach to see it clearly. You've learned to observe emotion. You've learned to pause reaction. You've learned to stop explaining. You've learned to detach. Now comes the advantage this discipline creates. Because calm is not passive. Calm is a weapon. Chapter 6. Calm is a weapon. Most people think calm is passive. It isn't. Calm is pressure without noise. Calm is control without force. Calm is dominance without effort. Calm always wins. You have a choice. That's the key. Why calm terrifies emotional people. Emotional people expect reaction. They expect anger. They expect defense. They expect explanation. When they don't get it, they lose balance. Your calm exposes their instability. That's why calm unsettles emotional opponents. That's why silence feels threatening. That's why steadiness feels powerful. Calm always wins. Emotion is loud. Calm is heavy. Emotion makes noise. Calm creates weight. In any room, the loudest person is rarely the strongest. The calmest one is. Why? Because calm signals control. Because calm signals certainty. Because calm signals that you are not affected. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't owe anyone emotional engagement. The person who stays calm decides the outcome. Read that again. The person who stays calm decides the outcome. Not the smartest. Not the loudest. Not the angriest. The calmest. Because they see clearly. Because they choose timing. Because they don't rush. That's the key. Why you lose power when you lose calm. The moment you lose calm, you lose perspective. Your vision narrows. Your tone shifts. Your words leak intent. Now others can read you, predict you, manipulate you. Calm protects information. No calm, no cover. Calm always wins. Calm is not personality. Some people say, "I'm just not calm by nature." That's an excuse. It's not about personality. It's about discipline. Calm is trained, practiced, earned. You have a choice. The real function of calm. Calm buys time. Time creates options. Options create leverage. Emotion collapses time. Calm expands it. That expansion is power. That's the key. Calm in conflict. In conflict, the emotional person wants resolution. The calm person wants control. Emotional people rush to finish. Calm people let things unfold. They listen more. They speak less. They wait. And waiting forces mistakes from the other side. Calm always wins. Why calm makes others reveal themselves. When you don't react, people fill the silence. They talk more. They justify. They overplay. Silence invites exposure. Calm invites truth. You don't need their permission to stay quiet. The discipline of physical calm. Calm starts in the body. Slow breathing. Relaxed shoulders. Still posture. Your body leads your mind. If your body is calm, your mind follows. That's not philosophy. That's biology. Discipline beats intensity. Every time. What to do when pressure hits. Pressure will come. That's guaranteed. When it does, follow this. Slow your breath. Lower your voice. Reduce movement. Say less. Calm always wins. The urge to prove. When challenged, you'll feel it. The urge to prove. The urge to assert. The urge to dominate. That urge is weakness disguised as strength. Real strength doesn't need demonstration. You don't need their permission to let things stand. Calm is not inaction. Calm does not mean you do nothing. It means you act without emotion. Action without emotion is precise. Action with emotion is sloppy. It's not about delay. It's about control. That's the key. Why people mistake calm for weakness? Because weak people project. They think, if I were calm, it would mean I care less. Wrong. Calm means you care enough not to lose control. And once they test you and see you don't move, they adjust. Respect follows calm. The practice. Practice calm when nothing is wrong. In minor irritation. In small delays. In simple disagreements. If you wait for big moments, you'll fail. Train calm daily. You have a choice. The inner statement. When emotion rises, say internally, I'm steady. I don't rush. I decide. Short, firm, final. Calm always wins. The identity shift. You are becoming someone who does not escalate, does not flinch, does not lose center. Someone who holds the frame. That presence decides outcomes before words are spoken. Closing the chapter. Understand this. Calm is not passive. Calm is pressure. Calm is authority. The one who stays calm controls the direction. The one who reacts follows. You've learned to observe. You've learned to pause. You've learned to detach. Now you wield calm as a weapon. But calm alone is not enough. Because decision-making is where control is proven. You've mastered calm. Now learn when to feel and when to decide. Chapter 7. Feel later, decide now. Most people decide based on how they feel. That's why they lose. Emotion clouds judgment. Emotion distorts timing. Emotion demands relief. Leaders don't obey emotion. They sequence it. Emotion after action. Not before. You have a choice. That's the key. Why feeling first fails you. When you feel first, you hesitate. You overthink. You stall. You wait to feel confident. You wait to feel ready. You wait to feel certain. That wait costs you momentum. Opportunities don't wait for your comfort. It's not about fear. It's about discipline. Emotion after action. Not before. Leaders decide under uncertainty. Leaders are not fearless. They are decisive. They act with incomplete information. They move without emotional permission. Feelings catch up later. That's the difference. Weak people need emotional alignment before action. Strong people create alignment through action. You don't need their permission to decide. You don't need approval from your own emotions. Emotion is a terrible advisor in the moment. Emotion is reactive. It's short term. It wants safety. Decisions require distance, perspective, timing. If you ask emotion to decide, it will choose comfort over growth. That's not leadership. That's avoidance. You have a choice. The sequence that builds power. Here is the correct order. Decision first. Action second. Emotion last. Not because emotion doesn't matter, but because it belongs after control is established. Emotion after action. Not before. That's the key. Why this feels unnatural. Because you were trained to prioritize feelings. To check in. To honor your emotions. That advice creates paralysis. Discipline creates movement. It's not about ignoring emotion. It's about delaying obedience. You feel it, but you don't obey it. Real-world decisions you've delayed. Sending the message, making the call, ending the situation, starting the work. You waited to feel ready. You never did. Action would have created readiness. Emotion after action, not before. Decision-making under pressure. Pressure magnifies emotion. That's when most people freeze. Leaders simplify. They ask, what must be done? Not, how do I feel about this? That question cuts through noise. You have a choice. The practice of decisive action. From now on, use this rule. If the decision aligns with your long-term direction, act. Even if emotion resists, especially if emotion resists. Resistance often means growth. That's the key. Emotions will protest. They will say, wait, think more, be careful, thank them, then move. Emotions are alerts, not commanders. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. Why action regulates emotion. Action grounds you. It restores control. It reduces anxiety. Most anxiety comes from indecision. Once you decide, emotion settles. That's why leaders appear calm after acting. Emotion follows action. Always. Stop seeking emotional certainty. Certainty comes from commitment, not feeling. You commit. You move. You adjust. That's how control is built. You don't need their permission to commit. You don't need permission from fear. The moment of execution. When you know what must be done, do it immediately. Not emotionally. Not aggressively. Clean. Calm. Final. Emotion after action. Not before. The identity shift. You are becoming someone who decides under pressure, moves without hesitation, processes emotion afterward. That identity creates momentum. Momentum creates confidence. Confidence stabilizes emotion. That's the cycle. When to process emotion. After the decision. After the action. In private. You reflect. You learn. You adjust. But you do not let emotion block movement. You have a choice. The cost of reversing the order. Feel first, decide later, and you drift. Decide first, feel later, and you lead. Simple. Not easy, but simple. Discipline beats intensity. Every time. The inner command. When hesitation hits, say internally, decide, move, adjust later, short, firm, final, emotion after action, not before, closing the chapter. Understand this, emotion is not the enemy, but it must come after decision. Leaders don't wait to feel strong. They act and strength follows. You've learned to observe emotion. You've learned to pause reaction. You've learned to detach. You've learned to wield calm. Now you've learned to decide. But decision-making still depends on one internal force. Your inner voice. You've acted. Now it's time to control what you tell yourself. Chapter 8. Control the inner dialogue. Every loss of control starts in the same place. Your head. Not the situation. Not the person. Not the pressure. Your inner dialogue. Emotional chaos starts with undisciplined self-talk. That's the root. You have a choice. That's the key. Your inner voice is either a leader or a liability. Most people don't think. They react to thoughts. They let the mind ramble, complain, catastrophize, and then they wonder why they feel unstable. If your inner voice is weak, your actions will be weaker. Talk to yourself like a leader. Why spiraling thoughts destroy control? Spiraling thoughts multiply emotion. One doubt becomes 10. One mistake becomes a disaster. One delay becomes failure. The mind exaggerates when it's undisciplined. Emotion feeds on stories. End the story, end the chaos. It's not about anxiety. It's about discipline. Leaders don't negotiate internally. Weak inner dialogue sounds like this. What if this goes wrong? Maybe I should wait. I don't know if I'm ready. That's not thinking. That's hesitation rehearsed. Leaders don't negotiate with fear. They issue commands. Short, clear, final. That's the key. Short commands beat long explanations. Long internal conversations create confusion. Short commands create movement. Instead of, I'm overwhelmed and this is too much, and say, focus. Instead of, I don't feel confident enough, say, move. Instead of, what if they judge me? Say, proceed. Talk to yourself like a leader. The mind needs structure. An undirected mind creates noise. A directed mind creates clarity. Your job is not to silence thoughts. Your job is to command them. You don't need their permission to interrupt your own mind. You have a choice. Why positive thinking fails. This is not about affirmations. This is not about hype. Positive thinking tries to feel good. Leadership thinking tries to be effective. Saying everything is fine doesn't work. Saying handle this does. It's not about optimism. It's about discipline. The 3 types of self-talk. There are only 3. Victim talk, narrator talk, leader talk. Victim talk complains. Narrator talk observes without action. Leader talk directs behavior. Only one creates control. Choose it. You have a choice. How to interrupt negative loops. When you notice a spiral, do this immediately. Stop the sentence. Replace it with a command. No debate. No analysis. Command replaces chaos. That's the key. Real examples in real time. Before a hard conversation. Stay calm. Speak slowly. Under pressure. Breathe. Decide. After a mistake. Adjust. Continue. Short. Firm. Repeatable. Talk to yourself like a leader. Why this feels uncomfortable at first? Because you're used to being emotionally indulgent. You let thoughts run freely. Leadership feels strict at first. Good. Structure creates freedom. Discipline beats intensity. Every time. Stop identifying with every thought. Not every thought deserves attention. Not every feeling deserves belief. Thoughts appear. You choose which ones to follow. That choice defines your control. You don't need permission from your mind. The inner standard. From now on, your inner voice must meet one rule. Does this help me act with control? If not, cut it. No argument. No discussion. That's leadership. The practice. Daily. Every day catch one weak thought. Replace it with one firm command. That's it. Small practice. Massive effect. Small moments of discipline compound. You know this. Why others can't shake you anymore. When your inner dialogue is disciplined, external noise loses power. Insults bounce. Pressure fades. Chaos slows. Because control is internal. That's the key. The identity shift. You are no longer someone who reacts to thoughts. You are someone who directs them. You lead yourself. And if you can lead yourself, no one else can control you. The inner command set. Build a small set of commands you use daily. Focus. Slow down. Decide. Move. Use them often. They become automatic. Closing the chapter. Understand this clearly. You will never control your emotions. If you don't control your inner dialogue, thoughts create emotion. Emotion drives action. You've learned to decide. You've learned to act. Now you've learned to command your mind. But control isn't just internal. It's also about where you spend your energy. You've mastered your thoughts. Now you must master your engagement. Chapter 9. Most conflicts don't deserve your energy. Most conflicts are traps. Not because they are dramatic, but because they are pointless. They steal time. They drain focus. They pull you down to someone else's level. Engagement is a choice, not an obligation. Not everything deserves a reaction. You have a choice. That's the key. Why people try to pull you into conflict. Conflict is fuel for insecure people. They want attention. They want validation. They want emotional control. If you engage, they win. Not because they're right, but because they got access. You don't need their permission to disengage. You don't owe energy to provocation. Engagement is consent. Every time you argue, you consent. You say, "This matters enough to respond." Most of the time, it doesn't. Walking away is not avoidance. It's selection. Strong people choose their battles. Weak people fight everyone. It's not about pride. It's about discipline. Why walking away feels hard? Because your ego wants to win. Because your emotions want release. Because silence feels like loss. But silence is not loss. Silence is control. Not everything deserves a reaction. Say it again. The difference between important and urgent. Most conflicts feel urgent. Very few are important. Urgency shouts. Importance waits. If you respond to urgency, you react. If you respond to importance, you lead. That's the key. Common energy traps. Online arguments. Petty workplace drama. Proving your point to someone who doesn't listen. These conflicts don't build your life. They consume it. You have a choice. The rule of selective engagement. Before engaging, ask one question. Does this move my life forward? If not, walk away. No explanation. No announcement. No drama. You don't need their permission to disengage. Why calm disengagement is powerful. When you disengage calmly, you deny reward. No reaction. No escalation. No drama. That frustrates people who thrive on chaos. Good. Not everything deserves a reaction. This is not passivity. Disengagement is not weakness. It's strategic restraint. You are not afraid. You are selective. There is a difference. It's not about fear. It's about discipline. The emotional hook. People will try to hook you emotionally. Insults, sarcasm, disrespect. They want to pull you into their frame. Refuse. Stay centered. Stay quiet. Move on. That's leadership. When to engage. Rare cases. Engage when your values are at stake. Your responsibility demands it. Your silence would cost more than action. Otherwise, step away. You decide. You have a choice. The practice of walking away. Start small. Ignore the comment. End the conversation early. Close the tab. Feel the urge to respond. Let it pass. Not everything deserves a reaction. Why this builds respect. People notice what you don't respond to. They learn. You can't bait them. You can't provoke them. That reputation protects you. Calm disengagement builds authority. The inner statement. When provoked, say internally, "This is not worth my energy. I choose peace. I move on." Short, firm, final. The identity shift. You are becoming someone who does not chase conflict, does not need to win arguments, does not waste energy. Someone who invests attention where it matters. That changes your entire life trajectory. The cost of constant engagement. Constant conflict keeps you reactive. Reactive people never build anything lasting. They are always responding, never creating. Discipline frees energy. Energy builds results. That's the key. Closing the chapter. Understand this clearly. Your energy is limited. Your focus is valuable. Most conflicts are distractions disguised as importance. You don't need to react to everything. You need to choose what deserves you. You've learned to observe emotion. You've learned to pause reaction. You've learned to detach. You've learned to wield calm. You've learned to decide. You've learned to control your inner dialogue. Now you've learned to disengage. One chapter remains, because discipline becomes complete. When it turns into identity, you've learned the skills. Now you become the standard. Chapter 10. Become emotionally unshakable. This is where it becomes permanent. Not motivation. Not technique. Identity. Emotional control is no longer something you try to do. It's who you are. You don't suppress emotions. You govern them. I decide how I respond. You have a choice. That's the key. From skill to identity. At first, control feels like effort. You pause. You remind yourself. You correct. That's training. But repetition changes wiring. What you repeat becomes automatic. What becomes automatic becomes identity. You are no longer someone who manages emotions. You are someone who does not lose control. That's the shift. Why most people never become unshakable. Because they stop at understanding. They listen. They agree. They feel inspired. Then they go back to reacting. Understanding does not change identity. Repetition does. Discipline beats intensity. Every time. Emotion is still there, but it no longer leads. Let's be clear. You still feel anger. You still feel fear. You still feel pressure. But feelings no longer sit in the driver's seat. They sit in the back. Observed. Contained. Governed. It's not about numbness. It's about authority. I decide how I respond. The mark of emotional maturity. Emotionally immature people ask, "Why do I feel this way?" Emotionally mature people ask, "What will I do about it?" One spirals. One decides. That's the difference. You have a choice. Unshakable people share 3 traits. First, they are slow to react. Second, they are selective with engagement. Third, they trust themselves. Not their mood. Not the moment. Themselves. That trust removes panic. Silence replaces urgency. Calm replaces chaos. Why governance is different from suppression. Suppression is fear. Governance is confidence. Suppression hides emotion. Governance uses it as data. You don't deny what you feel. You simply refuse to be ruled by it. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. That's the key. The internal command that defines you. From now on, this is your internal standard. I decide how I respond. Not, they made me angry. Not, I couldn't help it. Those are excuses. Strong people don't outsource control. You don't need their permission to remain steady. What happens when you become unshakable? People notice. They can't rush you. They can't bait you. They can't pressure you. Not because you resist harder. Because you don't move at all. That stillness is intimidating. Good. The final daily practice. To lock this in, do this every day. At the end of the day, ask, where did I choose my response? Not where you felt good. Not where you won. Where you chose. That reflection builds identity. When you slip, and you will react sometimes. You will speak too soon. You will feel pulled. That doesn't erase progress. Correct immediately. Return to discipline. Identity is not perfection. Identity is consistency. You have a choice. Stop waiting to feel unshakable. You don't feel unshakable first. You act unshakable first. Feeling follows behavior. Always. Emotion after action. Not before. The world will test you. Stress. Conflict. Disrespect. Pressure. These are not threats. They are confirmation tests. Every test asks the same question. Who is in control? Your answer is simple. I decide how I respond. The identity statement. Say it internally. Often. I don't rush. I don't explain. I don't react. I decide. Short. Firm. Final. What you no longer do. You no longer argue to win. You no longer explain to be accepted. You no longer react to feel relief. Those habits belong to the old version. You have evolved. What you do instead. You pause. You observe. You choose. Every time. That's emotional authority. The cost and the reward. Yes, you will feel misunderstood sometimes. Yes, you will feel detached from chaos. That's the price. The reward? Clarity. Respect. Freedom. No one can shake what they can't control. Final truth of the book. This entire audiobook comes down to one decision. Not once. Every day. You can let emotions run your life. Or you can run your emotions. You don't need permission. You don't need perfect conditions. You don't need approval. You have a choice. That's the key. Final line. You don't suppress emotions. You govern them. And from this moment on, I decide how I respond. You now understand the truth. Your emotions were never the enemy. Your lack of control was. From this moment on, you pause before reacting. You choose silence over impulse. You choose discipline over relief. Emotionally strong people are not louder. They are steadier. The world will test you. People will provoke you. Situations will pressure you. Your job is simple. Do not react. Do not explain. Do not lose control. Master your emotions or spend your life being mastered by them. The choice is yours.